we need an organization like the Center for American Restoration is to push back on the way that the establishment sets the agenda.
Russ Vought is joining me now. He's the former director of the Office of Management and Budget, as well as the president of the Center for American Restoration. Russ, thanks so much for joining me today.
You bet. Thanks for having me.
Now, you've recently launched a new think tank, the Center for American Restoration. Can you give us a general overview of what this think tank is about and some of the major issues and topics that you'll be focusing on?
Sure, we're going to be fully engaged on the cultural issues, America First type issues that have resonated in the last 4 or 5 years, and I think were new ideas that were brought to the center-right movement by President Trump, and we believe that there needs to be a home, an institutional home for those issues and that agenda. Our mission statement is to restore a consensus in America that we're a country under God with unique interests that flow from our people, our history, and our institutions, and our individual freedoms are enjoyed best in healthy communities with just laws. And there's a little bit of a necessary corrective, I think, in each one of those emphases that I think will allow us over time to make sure that we are pushing back against the left and progressivism in a way that accounts for all of the concerns of the forgotten men and women across this country. So we're excited to get started. Some of the initial issues that we'll be taking on are voter fraud concerns, big tech reform, battling the Biden administration's amnesty proposal. So it's a target-rich environment, but it's one that we're excited to be engaged on.
How do you think your think tank will stand out from the others in Washington, D.C.?
Yeah, we'll be very oriented towards the battle. We view ourselves as an action center. It's one of the reasons why we're named as such. We want to be geared towards winning the debate in the grassroots, winning the debate in the halls of Congress, winning the debate on air, and that we put forward research and analysis that is as credible and as robust as possible, but it's always designed to win a conversation that people are having in those settings, but also just in your family, in your communities, in your neighborhoods. One of the challenges that I think we have, Samantha, right now is that we are so divided as a country, and we are divided most on these cultural issues. And the solution to that is not to recede and flee from those issues. The solution is to engage those and to be willing to converse and debate in a way that is not heated, but it is also cares for the other person who may disagree with you, but also is designed to win them back. We need to win back a consensus in this country about what it means to be an American.
I want to talk a little bit about your time as the director of the Office of Management and Budget. And Dana Milbank of the Washington Post wrote a pretty critical piece about you. And I'd like to, walk through some of the more serious claims and, allow you to respond to them. First and foremost, he blames you for potential vaccine delays, continued unemployment, and even an attack on the United States because of, quote, sabotage by you by, quote, intentionally botching the transition, and compared you to a, quote, arsonist in charge of the fire department. What do you think of this?
Well, Dana certainly had some strong views in that article. I think the reality is much different, and it was a partisan hack piece that was unfortunately printed. But look, we worked with the transition, and everything that they needed from the standpoint of information they got. We had over 50 different meetings with the transition. What we didn't do was we were not going to develop their policies for them so that they would have the ability on our watch to be able to move forward and take down or move in a different direction the policies that the American people put President Trump in office to deliver on. So, the big one was they wanted us to actually write their budget for them. And that's not something that we were going to do. But in terms of whether we let them know all of the funding accounts and how we were paying for Operation Warp Speed, at the moment that Dana was writing that column, they had all of that information. We had left a lot of information with regard to the extent of our defense needs. Again, all of those things were things that we provided. So, rubbing is racing, and that's what the political square is like. But I don't think people should think too much about that particular article.
It says that you denied Biden or President-elect Joe Biden's the policy analysis and budget preparedness assistance given to previous administrations, including former President Obama as well as President Trump. So, do you deny that ever happening?
I do believe that we provided all the information to the transition as it pertains to where does the state of these programs. We did not give them the ability to write their budget on our watch. We did change precedent when it came to that, but it was also after 4 years of being delayed and attacked and not given as much of the time that we would be normally afforded because we were dealing with the left's crazed desire to take the president out. That time was of the essence, and so look, we were not going to. We believe in the viewpoint that there's only one president at a time, and from the standpoint of writing their budget for them, it's not something that we were going to do.
Something else that he points out is this jump in the national debt from $6 trillion debt increase in just 2 years, which was the greatest jump in history. Can you talk a little bit about that and what he points out in the article?
Look, President Trump proposed more savings and cuts and reforms than any president in history. So we had 4 different budgets that were historic from that standpoint, and those reforms were repeatedly denied on Capitol Hill by Congress. And as a result, we saw an increase in the debt and deficits. We also then went into a catastrophic situation with regard to a pandemic that we hadn't seen in 100 years. And we also dealt with the reality of the economic shock that came as a result of that. On a bipartisan basis, we were not going to let anything stand in the way of both dealing with the pandemic and dealing with the reality of what was needed to address the economic situation in small businesses across the country that were dealing with lockdowns. So, look, if you're comparing the levels from where we started to when we ended, they did increase, but there's a context there that people need to understand.
Something else that he notes is these posts that were critical that you wrote that were critical of Republicans. Do you stand by what you wrote, and do you think there's been any shift in the GOP?
Yeah, I don't quite remember what you're referring to there. We had a very successful time during my period at OMB in the work that we did on a bipartisan basis to be able to tackle issues and serve the president and execute his agenda.
To reference the exact quotes that he was pulling out that are mentioned in the article, is that you say that Republicans are fundamentally in their DNA unwilling to fight. Do you still stand by that?
I think it's one of the reasons that we need an organization like the Center for American Restoration is to push back on the way that the establishment sets the agenda. And I do continue to think that, and that our grassroots has particular issues that are on their mind, the forgotten men and women across this country, and that these are important issues that DC needs to take account for. And that, I look at it from the standpoint, there's often within Congress and with the establishment a desire to minimize political risk at all costs. Unfortunately, that does not allow you to accomplish your policy objectives more times than not. And so I come at this from the standpoint of what's necessary to accomplish our policy objectives and to take on political risk as a result. I think that's where the grassroots is that puts men and women in Congress in office. And that is going to be our perspective at the Center for American Restoration.
Now, I know that the think tank that you just launched is relatively new, but moving forward, what role do you think it will have with elected officials? And is there anyone that you're hoping to work closely with that's currently serving our government?
Yeah, no, we're in the scale-up phase of both organizations. We will be serving and working with anyone that is willing to align with us on ideas. And so, this is not necessarily aimed at a particular group of people, but we are in the scale-up phase, and we'll be putting forward policy papers and working with offices as they reach out to us.
Well, Russ Vought, I so appreciate you coming on today to talk about your new think tank as well as your time serving as the director of the Office of Management and Budget. I greatly appreciate it, and I hope you'll join me again soon to talk about your think tank more.
Thanks. Appreciate it.